Hey, um, another South African meta is coming up on the 28th, and this will be my talk through of what is happening there. So let's go and see what we can find out. Just a sec. I need to share my screen. I know. And remember to share the screen, right? Because I've had a few failures recently. Right, here we go. So, South African Nationals. The event itself this year is 1250 points, so a lot of points. You can either bring a double reinforced platoon or a single reinforced platoon or a single theater selector platoon. So lots of different options, and there's a lot of nice and interesting special rules. You could go down that route if you're going to go theater selectors. I have to say, not a lot of people did. Um, so that's a thing where most people actually either went double reinforced or single reinforced. Um, but you could. You can only bring one free unit per list. I think that is absolutely fine. I see no reason to allow that for most most armies. And there were 20 players signed up when I got the lists. So for me, the list rankings are between 2, not competitive, and 4, very, very strong lists. So a good spread of lists. Most of them were around, like on average, a 3, which is standard competitive lists. So pretty much what we expect to see. The order dice count, it looks as if and this, by the way, this is taking place near Cape Town, I think, in the Cape anyway, so not in the Joburg area. So, and it looks like the meta there, or maybe the South African meta is changing a little bit. The order dice has increased from what we have seen before, but then again, they are using quite a lot of points here. 1250 does give you quite a lot to spend. So the order dice are between 12 and 19, 12 being very, very low, and 19 being okay. And we see the average being 15.5, which is a little low for me. Uh, for 1250, I would ideally be between 16 and 17, and that's where we see most of the lists, by the way. So I think there were like 3 lists that had 16 and 5 lists that had 17. So most of the lists were around that mark, 16 to 17, most of them being 17, but then they drop off sharply again on the other side of 17, and there's only one list that had 19 order dice. Um, a very, very specific list for that, which was a free French motorized gun list. Very cool. Right. The nations being chosen. I talked about this in my recent meta video as well. In South Africa, I think there's a little bit of sticking with a team or something like that because the Afrikaners have German-speaking heritage. So Germany is actually the most popular nation to bring. But I think also we're seeing a move towards making Germany great again. I think that there is a little bit of a thing that's happening where maybe we're seeing a few German builds that can do well. I'm not necessarily convinced that this will be the time where this happens, but we are seeing a lot of people trying. Um, Americans and Soviets and Great British are the next batch. As expected, I expected these to be above Germany. For European standard, that would be the thing. But since we know South African meta is a little bit skewed towards bringing Germany, oh, makes sense. And then the Finns and the Italians both make a double appearance here, which is really nice to see. Finnish, of course, are solid. They have good infantry. They have wonderful special rules. They have wonderful miniatures as well. And I think could do well, but we're not really seeing it for the past couple of years. Italians also have struggled a lot, but I think with the new army lists that are coming out, units being released in both Tough Gut and Code Blue, I think we're going to see quite a lot of interesting stuff starting to happen. Um, Canadians, Hungarians, and the Free French each appear with one army, which is pretty much as expected. You would expect to see a few people bringing their minor nations or what have you, just because they love them or because they built them or whatever. Um, Typically, they won't do so well, but we're still all rooting for one of them to win these tournaments, aren't we? Now, the builds. This is also pretty interesting because, as I did alluded to in my meta video, we are seeing different regional metas that have different builds that people think are good. Now, the South African meta, I alluded to this in my video as well. They had a very specific build going on a few years back, and we see this very, very clearly in the um, in the lists for this event. And if I have time, I'll go over the winning lists once we get there. And while I do that, I'll at least show one of these lists. But the build is called Camping Germans. It's a gear heavy list where you buy a lot of gear for your very decked out and very strong, like veteran Germans sitting in your back line, supported by a Panzer or something like that. Um, Very difficult to approach and just pumping out shots from the back line. That is called Camping Germans, and we're seeing quite a lot of these. So gear heavy lists, most of them German, um, most of them focused on staying alive and having very expensive units, but of course that means that the order dice count is low. At the same time, we're seeing related lists, skirmish heavy lists. 7 armies have skirmish heavy lists. These are, of course, related to the Camping Germans. The Camping Germans are more of a standoff than a true skirmisher army, but these are clearly the most popular ones. Death Stars also make an appearance. Of course, they do because they're related to the Camping Germans, but also because you have 1250 points. A lot of people will think or at least feel like they have the points left over, especially if you're going single platoon. You have the points left over for an expensive tank, right? So you try that, see if you can make it work. And I think that is why we're seeing tanks here. And most of them Germans, but not all of them. There's a few different tanks in the mix here. Um, there's 5 leaf blower lists or lists that have leaf blower elements because you could take dual platoons. So a lot of people are running multiple HE units like mortars, Nebelwerfers, or other multi-rocket launchers, howitzers. Um, and there's even that one motorized gun, Free French build with a lot of guns sitting on carriages so they can move. Um, so those are leaf blower lists. I am really looking forward to seeing if some of them might be able to pull up into the top bracket, because that's one of the things we've been lacking, really lacking. Not only have Germany been in a bit of a slump, and most minor nations and the French, but we're also not seeing leaf blower lists in the top brackets. So that is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing if they can do that. There's only one true assault list. Of course, it's a British dual platoon list um, with both a Sherman and a Stuart, and Gurkhas, of course. So one true assault list. The rest are not assault lists at all, although some of them can do a little bit of assault. And one multiple small unit list, MSU list, which is interestingly enough not the what we have been seeing lately here in Europe, the American Scout teams, FSSF Scouts, but it is the SAS Northwestern Europe list, which is amazingly cool because you can always outflank. So in many missions where outflank is not allowed, hot damn, you're playing with fire. It's really, really good. And of course, it has a lot of transport jeeps with a lot of Dhaka built into that list as well. And then there's one Noob Basher list, a list that has multiple multi-rocket launchers. Not a true Noob Basher, so it doesn't have, I think it has 2. But it's what it leans into is that multiple rocket launchers and then HE. with some standoff infantry. So those are the builds that we're seeing here. Very different spread from what we're seeing in Northern Europe, very different spread from what we're seeing in Great Britain. But of course, this is South Africa, so the local meta is dominating here, and it's very clear for me that there is a local meta here, which is really cool. I love it. The main takeaways for me is that um, the South African meta doesn't really have a lot of darker tanks at 1250. Maybe not expected, but double platooning, would I take two double stewards? Yeah, I think I would. But that's me. I'm an evil whacker, right? Schützen seems to have been allowed here. So at least most of the good German builds take Schützen with one LMG, maybe even two, buying it. Um, so, and I think that's really clever, but it's not actually legal in the rules to do so. But it is clever because the Germans really need like one good standout unit, and the Schützen are it. Um, there's a surprising amount of gear because I'll have said this many times on this channel that most often buying extra weapons for your dudes is not worth it. Buy extra bodies instead. Um, there are specific instances, of course, where the gear is worth it, but most of the time, if you're buying LMGs, for instance, not worth the points. So unless you're playing a very specific pack where there are certain bonuses. But South Africans clearly disagree with me because a lot of their lists buys LMGs or other gear. And there's no barbecue, like spamming flamethrowers, not a thing at all. Not at all, which is also kind of surprising, given like the latest few lists that we've seen from the UK at least, where barbecue is still a thing. In Europe, barbecue has mostly left the meta. We're not seeing it in many of the European top tournaments, but in the UK, yeah, still a thing. Definitely still a thing. And in a minute, I'm going off to World Open War. Lots of the lists there are still barbecue lists. Lots of the British lists Welsh are still barbecue lists. So it's still a thing there, but definitely not in South Africa. Now, predictions. I have predictions for the top 5, and I will do a follow-up video once I have the results where I will talk you through the 5 top lists and show you one of them, camping German lists. Now, this is my predictions. I predict that, and this is only based on my list ranking. If you don't know what that is, go and watch my video. I've made a video explaining about how I rank lists. Um, so I think that Andre, his dual German generic reinforced platoon, 15 order dice, a little low, but he has Schützen spam with HE. It's a perfect combination of standoffish Germans, and the Schützen can even skirmish forward. For me, that is a very, very good darker army. It's a little low on order dice, but not massively detrimental. So I think Andre could do well, and I think he could be in the top 3, depending, of course, on player and who he faces and how the dice roll on the day and everything, terrain, whatever. Adrian also has one of the strongest armies in my book. Both of these are 3.5s to 4s, by the way. Adrian has 18 order dice, dual Brits, generic reinforced platoons, assault Gurkhas, with Steward and a Sherman. I like this combination. We're seeing this a little bit popping up, especially in high point games, where the Steward is supplemented by something else that can kill Stewards or can support in some other way. Really clever, love it. It's a really good list, that one. I would happily play it. And then we have Adams, 18 Ordinized British Theatre Platoon. That's the 8th Army. So it has double of everything good, mortars and everything. But surprisingly, no darker tanks, no stewards were taken. I think you can't take them maybe in that theatre platoon. I have to take something else, maybe. At least Adam didn't take them. But 18 Ordinary is a very good count, and of course, there's a lot of all the good stuff that the Brits get. Then there's Daniels, as I mentioned before, Daniels SAS Northwestern Europe, which is a recce MSU army, has 17 order dice, quite a high order dice count as well. Everything is very survivable, everything can move. The units are very small, but they're veterans, fanatics, tough fighter, and all of that. Very standoffish. Lots of SMGs on them. And then there's Jason's 16 order dice, and this one I'm rooting for. Come on, Jason! Finnish dual generic reinforced platoon. And basically, what I think he did was he looked at the Finnish list and said, "Can I have 2 of everything that's good, please?" Like he's taken 2 Capachos, 2 Sissies, 2 Continuation War, 2 Mold, everything that's good, 2 snipers. Double up on everything. I love it. I love it to bits. It's the way to go. 16 order dice, also pretty good. So those are my top 5 predictions. Good luck to everyone going, and I will see you once the tournament is done. We will see what happened. Cheerio.